Hello everyone, welcome to Fundvaliz Nivesh Simplified. My name is Pawan Mehar, founder of Fundvaliz Wealth Management and online mutual fund platform. At Fundvaliz Nivesh Simplified, we try to bring a simplicity in the investment, how to simplify your investments and go ahead for your long-term investing. When it comes to a long-term investing, we get always carried away with fear and greed in the market. When we want to talk about the long-term investment, we talk about the fundamentals, but then our greed and fear always makes us think about the short-term factors in the market. When the market is going up, when the market is going down, always our fear and that greed brings us back in terms of our long-term investment. So whenever we talk about any kind of a long-term investor, I think they have traded the economies, they have traded the economic cycles of a particular country. They have never tried the market, they have never tried the short-term factors in the market. Whatever their fear of or a successful investor convert his fears into the opportunity. Whatever his greed is there, so he has converted that greed into a systematic approach in terms of the investment. So it is the most important factor when we talk about the long-term investment to have a conviction about your investment. And from where that conviction can bring, where we can understand that whatever the directions of our investments are right, is by understanding a particular economy. So today, I think I have a kind of opportunity to interact with Mr. Nilesh Shah, Managing Director of Kotak Mutual Fund. I think Nilesh sir का introduction मुझे देना बहुत छोटी बात हो जाएगी. I think Nilesh sir is one of the most favorite personality in the investment world in India. The kind of experience which he has, I think it phenomenal, and he is one of the best person to talk about Indian economy. So let's start Bharat ki Khoj with Mr. Nilesh Shah. Mr. Nilesh Shah is a member of Economic Council to Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi. So I think he is really a right person to give us a direction about the Indian economy, to give us that what kind of things are there in India and why the investor should look for the long term in terms of his investing in long term for India. Sir, I think I remember, and I am very fortunate enough to work with you since my beginning of the career. And I still remember 15 years back the kind of things which you used to say, there would be this kind of a change in the India and this will work like this. And then we have exactly seen the same thing happening in India. In last 20 years also, if you look at the returns on the Indian markets or the returns in terms of even in terms of the equity mutual fund has always been a double digit or rather in excess of 12 to 15%. And then there was a lot of events which has happened in India right from 2008 recession kind of a period. In 2011-12 also there were some kind of a jerks. And recently also we have seen there are some kind of factors like COVID and then Ukraine war and all those things. So I just wanted to understand that and please highlight certain kind of factors and enlighten our listener about that what has exactly changed in last 20 years in India and how the world is looking at us as the economy. Could you please just guide us on this particular thing, sir?
So if we look at India since independence, in 1947, when we got independence, we were the second largest economy in Asia. Our market share in trade was pretty high. We had automobile factory, steel factory, aviation industry. Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, they were all behind us. Now, today when we see Japan is way ahead of us. Korea, which was below us in 1960, is way ahead of us. China, which was equal to us in 1980, is way ahead of us. Somewhere from independence, the economic policies which we followed did create growth in India, did lifted people from poverty, but it was far lower than what our peers achieved. The first liberalization happened in 1991 under P.V. Narasimha Rao government. Dr. Manmohan Singh as finance minister liberated Indian economies. And thereafter, we have chugged along. Now, let's recount what changes have happened in last 30 years. Earlier, if you looked at movies like Mother India, Roti Kapda or Makan, Kali Charan, the villain was always black marketer of food grains. The climax scene was in a godown where villain's food grain was stored and hero will open it. Now, our terrorists are villains in films, are terrorists and politicians and so on and so forth. Why did this change happen in Bollywood? Because India transited from high inflation economy to moderate inflation economy. Today in India, there are so many critics who are saying that Indian inflation is running high and RBI is behind the curve. But this is probably one of that rare period where American inflation is higher than Indian inflation. Earlier 10%, 12% inflation हमें normal लगता था. आज 6% inflation हमें high लगता है. This is all because in 2014, Government of India mandated Reserve Bank of India to do inflation targeting. Hopefully, over next 10 years, our journey will be moderate inflation to low inflation. Prior to 1990, India was always short of FX reserves. आपको बाहर जाना है तो पैसा गवर्नमेंट डिटरमाइन करके देती थी, and that's where we had hawala market which was thriving. In 1991 we had to pledge gold in order to borrow money. Today we have fourth or fifth largest FX reserves in the world. We are one of the few countries whose external debt is lower than the FX reserves. In April, May 2021, during devastating second wave, Government of India could import oxygen concentrators, medicines, oxygen plants, and so on and so forth, because we had reserves in our pocket. अगर 91 की तरह होते तो कहाँ से import करते? India has transited from low FX reserves to high FX reserves, from FX shortages to FX availability. The third thing is fiscal prudence. In the past, we were always spending more than what we were earning. Even today, we are doing the same thing. But compared to past, where our fiscal deficit was much higher, now it is gradually reducing. And even in COVID pandemic, we didn't go out and spend as much money as other countries have done. From fiscal profligacy to fiscal prudence is the path India is choosing. We have Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which puts constitutional caps on how much deficit government can run. Now imagine a country where inflation will be moderate to low, FX reserves will be available, and fiscal prudence will be followed. That creates the foundation on which you can create higher growth. The second change which is happening in India is infrastructure availability. Pawan, you'll remember in our childhood days, younger days, Mumbai-Pune was an overnight journey. हमें स्कूल ट्रिप में लोनावला लेके जाते थे, एंड मैं बस में हमेशा भगवान से प्रार्थना करता था, बिकॉज घाट के ऊपर जब बस रुकती थी तो डर लगता था. Today, if you can get out of Mumbai traffic, Mumbai-Pune is 1.5 hour journey. मेरी वाइफ गाड़ी ऐसे चलाती है जैसे वो उड़ाने वाली हो. So आज भी जब मुंबई पुणे जाता हूं तो भगवान को प्रार्थना करता हूं, but that is totally for different reason. पूरे देश में we are seeing now infrastructure availability across many sectors. Our ports are as efficient as other countries. Recently, world's largest container ship came to Mundra, and it was loaded, reloaded in record time, comparable to the best in the world. Our ports have become efficient. Highways are good. Our power right now, there might be some power cuts in some parts of the country because of summer heat, but we are now the third largest producer of power in the world. Now, inner city traffic is still an issue, but in many places, we have become infrastructure shortages to infrastructure availability. Hopefully, someday we will become infrastructure surplus also like Western world. The other change is infrastructure is turning from physical to digital. एक colonial magazine का reporter था, when he was for 3-4 years, he about India. He couldn't find anything good in India when he was staying here. Then he was sent to France because he did so much bitching about. The first tweet he was when I wanted to shift money from one bank account to another bank account. It was instant in India. The damn thing takes 3 days in France. पवन भाई के कितने NRI रिलेटिव है, बट मेरे तो बहुत हैं. बचपन से लेके पिछले कई सालों तक वो जब आते थे तो चॉकलेट देते थे, सोप देते थे, शैम्पू देते थे और हमेशा कहते थे हमारे इंग्लैंड में ऐसा, आपके इंडिया में वैसा, हमारे अमेरिका में ऐसा, आपके इंडिया में वैसा. आज जब वो आते हैं तो मैं कहता हूँ मेरे इंडिया में वैक्सीन सर्टिफिकेट व्हाट्सएप पे मिल जाता है, आपके अमेरिका में तो अभी भी मतलब पर्ची मिलती है और गुम हो जाए तो आपको दूसरी नहीं मिलेगी. This is the power of India's digital infrastructure. We are better than the best in the world in payment infrastructure, in many of digital infrastructure. Now imagine Indian entrepreneurs. In the past, he struggled with physical infrastructure and that also in short supply. Now today's Indian entrepreneur is getting infrastructure being available and it's a digital infrastructure as well. Finally, 2-3 things which are changing. One is availability of capital. मैं गुज्जू भाई हूँ, मैं नौकरी कर रहा हूँ, मैं धंधा नहीं कर सका बिकॉज मेरे पिताजी जब मैं बहुत छोटा था तब गुजर गए. वो हमारे लिए उतनी वेल्थ नहीं रख पाए थे. Despite not having money, my brother is still a businessman, but he is a far smaller businessman than what he should have been if he had money left by my parents. In my generation, Pawan bhai, आप माता पिता के पैसों से ही धंधा कर सकते थे. आज की तारीख में अगर मैं मेरी बेटी को ये कहूं कि बेटा धंधा करने के लिए तुम्हें मेरे से पैसे लेने की जरूरत पड़ेगी, तो वो कहेगी आपका पैसा आपके पास रखिए पापा, मैं तो प्राइवेट इक्विटी या वेंचर कैपिटल के पास चली जाऊंगी. Indian entrepreneurs are now getting availability of capital. एक समय था जब इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम में बंबई के क्रिकेटरों की बोलबाला होती थी. शिवाजी पार्क टीम वर्चुअली इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम होती थी ना. उस समय हम कई बार जीतते थे, कई बार ड्रॉ करते थे और कई बार हारते थे. फिर छोटे छोटे गांव के लोग इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम में आने लगे. रांची से धोनी आया या रांची से धोनी आया या अलग अलग कस्बों से लोग आए. अब इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम ज्यादातर जीतती है, बहुत कम बार हारती है. जो इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम में डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन से हुआ वैसा ही बिजनेस में हो जाएगा. पहले टाटा बिरला, अंबानी, अडानी हमारी इकोनॉमी को ग्रो करते थे. अब उनके साथ साथ नए लोग, जीरोधा, बाईजूस, ओला, ये लोग भी ज्वाइन हो जाएंगे. एंड फाइनली जो सबसे बड़ी चीज हो रही है इंडिया में कि हम पब्लिक सेक्टर को कमांडिंग हाउस जो देते थे वहां से पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप में आ रहे हैं. एयर इंडिया जब टाटा के हाथ में थी तो भले छोटी एयरलाइन थी बट दुनिया भर में वो मशहूर थी. पीपल वेर लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू एयर इंडिया टू ट्रैवल टू इंडिया. फिर जब वो सरकारी हाथ में चली गई तो सर्विसेज का स्टैंडर्ड गिर गया. उससे शायद हमारे टूरिज्म सेक्टर के ऊपर इम्पैक्ट हुआ. लूरेव का एक म्यूजियम है फ्रांस में, उसमें जितने विजिटर आते हैं तकरीबन उतने ही विजिटर पूरे भारत में आते हैं, इंक्लूडिंग एनआरआईज हु आर कमिंग टू इंडिया। एक सिंगापुर जैसा छोटा देश जितने टूरिस्ट को अट्रैक्ट करता है उतना शायद इंडिया नहीं करता, बिकॉज उस मतलब बहुत सारी चीजें उसके लिए रिस्पॉन्सिबल है, बट एक मात्रा आपकी एयरलाइन की भी उसमें है। नाउ यही एयर इंडिया टाटा के पास वापस है, हो सकता है कि वापस एयर इंडिया अपनी पुरानी लेवल पे पहुंच जाए और टूरिज्म को डेवलप करे इंडिया में। गवर्नमेंट strategically divesting PSUs through public-private partnership will go a long way in supporting our economy. Now you combine all these things, we will be moderate inflation economy, fiscally prudent economy, having FX surpluses, having infrastructure availability, having world-class digital infrastructure, having availability of capital for our entrepreneurs, and government acting as a regulator rather than a player. Put all these things together, can there be a doubt that India's growth over next 10, 15, 20 years will be higher than the last 10, 15, 20 years? Undoubtedly, yes. But have we done everything? Answer is no. We still have two major tasks to accomplish. One is the rule of law. Our judiciary is overburdened. Commercial disputes takes years and years to settle. आज भी 1992 के स्कैम के केसेस चालू है. An investor will invest in a country when he is confident about rule of law. We have a long way to give them confidence on the same. And the second thing is ease of doing business on ground. आज top level पे government में, चाहे center हो, state हो, there is a lot of consensus about creating growth, supporting businesses. But when it comes to the ground, there are too many rules, regulations, compliance burden. ये ease of doing investment, ease of doing business बहुत जरूरी है. How do we ensure that our entrepreneurs get supported by best of the logistics? Their compliance burden is reduced. They are being facilitated rather than being obstructed in order to compete with the best in the world. If we can get rule of law and if we can improve our ease of doing business on ground, I'm sure India will be the fastest growing economy in the world in the years to come.
So basically, Bharat ka Parivartan is happening, and then that's why I think we are into a right direction. I think you have very well summarized. So I think, and that's where I think the first step of a confidence when it comes on the long-term investing, as I said to earlier, because कोई भी इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हुए एक कन्विक्शन होना जरूरी है, तभी जाके आप लॉन्ग टर्म का इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं. एक डायरेक्शन होना जरूरी है. सो आई थिंक from your summary, you have really well summarized that. Okay, ठीक है, परिवर्तन तो हुआ है. So and then whatever has happened in last 20 years, I think we would be a better off than next 20 years. And as I said, that there was some kind of a benchmarks of the returns which we got it as an investor in last 20 years. So of course, I think the gravity of those things will be much better in future. सर आई थिंक आई जस्ट वांटेड टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो परिवर्तन तो हो रहा है, भारत की खोज करते हुए एक बहुत जरूरी और इम्पोर्टेंट चीज ये हो जाती है, ये भारत की जनता सर, ये भारतीय डेमोग्राफिक्स. सो इंडियन डेमोग्राफिक, हाउ दिस इंडियन डेमोग्राफिक्स कैन change the thought process for the world, how this Indian demographic can help our economy to boost. And I think probably we have seen those kind of signs in recent years. But I think you are the expert into this particular thing to analyze our demographics, analyze our population. So जो जनता है, देश को एक जनता बनाती है. So what's your thought process on Indian demographics, and then how Indian demographics can help us to grow our country?
So किसी भी देश के growth के लिए it is extremely important that they have younger population. Now, fortunately for India, it will have one of the youngest population in the world. Now, for this population, we have to create jobs. For this population, we have to create gainful employment. Agar India ka problem we have to determine in just one sentence, it is that there are 10 to 15 crore more people working in agriculture than in other businesses. Now we have to grow manufacturing and services to a level where this kind of shift can occur. How do we do that? Our IT industry has shown how jobs can be created. Our generic pharma and automobile industry has shown how jobs can be created. Now we need to replicate this across various other industries. The second thing is exports. We have a very large domestic market of more than 1.36 billion consumers. But globally, if we start exporting, then it's over and above our domestic market. So we have to grow our manufacturing and services industry not only to cater domestic market, but also exports market. This in turn will create jobs and employment, which will allow this 10-15 crore people to be deployed from agriculture into this, and that will create its own growth momentum. China became manufacturer to the world, created employment for their people, and that's how they have become $10,000 per capita GDP country. We have to create manufacturing and services job, taking surplus labor away from agriculture into more productive industrial and services job.
Okay. So I think there is another factor when we talk about the population, and then I think existing factors, which is in terms of the current, the per capita income and all these things. And that's where I think in last 5 years or 10 years kind of a period that our consumptions have grown significantly well. Any comment on that particular thing, sir?
So we have done well relative to where we were in 1947. We have lifted many people from poverty. We have created world-class industry in IT and pharma. We have created world-class industry even in government sector like space technology. Now, the whole point is that we have done well vis-a-vis where we were in 47. But we have not done as well if I compare myself to Korea, Taiwan, China, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore. Now, how do we grow at a faster pace so that entire country's living standard comes at par with other Asian nations? That is the whole question. And in order to create economic growth, there are many favorable factors. We have done a lot of work, and there are certain challenges which we still have to overcome. To give you a small example, in recent times, in 2014-15, we were large importer of mobile phones. Almost $8 to $10 billion worth of mobile phones we were importing. There were 3-4 factories manufacturing mobile phones in India, having production value of somewhere around 19 to 22,000 crore. Now, government realized that if India is the largest consumer of mobile phones, then we also need to manufacture mobile phones in India. We can't keep on importing them. They encouraged manufacturers of mobile phones to come in India. Fast forward to 2022, the world's largest mobile handset manufacturing plant is operating in Noida, UP by Samsung. Apple and Samsung, two large global brands, now manufacture mobile in India. Their exports are likely, the mobile phone exports are likely to touch $5 billion in FY22. Both Apple and Samsung's total manufacturing value is about $5 billion, almost 100% more than what they had anticipated. Our local mobile production value is now 2,20,000 crore. It is up 12 times in last 8 years. We have created jobs in mobile handset industry. Now, from being importer, we are being exporter. We are meeting domestic demand with local manufacturing. All this is great. Now we need to keep moving ahead. In 2014, we were assembler of mobile phones. Today we are assembler plus little bit of value add. But we need to indigenize things even more so that value add can keep on increasing. Eventually in mobile phone, what matters is the chip. There are only 5 or 6 countries which manufacture chip. We must ensure that there is chip manufacturing in India. That's how we can capture the value add in mobile phones. So what we did with mobile phones in recent times, what we did with IT and pharma over the last 20, 30 years, we need to replicate across many industries so that India becomes higher per capita GDP economy.
Okay. So another thing, I think in a lot of your conversation, I think you and now also you are talking about the technology and all these things. So भारत की खोज करते हुए ये भारत, I think in last couple of years is trying to become विज्ञान की महाशक्ति उभर के आ रही है. So basically, the kind of exports in terms of the technology, that is also one of the most important thing in India. So whatever Vigyan or science and technology, the way it is shaping in India, I think those are the kind of amazing facts which is coming in. And as far as IT industry is concerned, I think recently we have seen that okay, there is a very high attrition. So basically, it's only because the kind of a demand which that industry is trying to do. As far as I think in one of the conversation I have seen that okay, you mentioned about the kind of a technology experts as well. So while considering technology as a sector, what is your view on Indian technology, Indian IT companies, as well as overall development of science and research in India, and then how in next 20 years probably it will help us to grow better.
So, Pawan bhai, we have a long way to go on scientific research and development. In the past, India was known for Taxila and Nalanda, where people used to come to study from all over the world. We were advanced in science and technology compared to rest of the world. But today, that is not the case. Our spending on R&D is substantially lower compared to the rest of the world. Our cutting edge innovation is substantially lower compared to the rest of the world. And this is the journey which we have to catch, we have to bridge over many, many years to come. Now, what we are lacking on basic scientific research and development, we are trying to cover up by Jugaad. We are very good at frugal engineering. The world would not have been able to create a 1 lakh rupee motor car, but Indian engineers could take the challenge and created Nano. Now, it was not as successful from a marketing point of view, but from a car running point of view, Nano was a miracle. In milk production, we did a lot of Jugaad. Today, we are the largest milk producer in the world. I remember many years ago, I was traveling in a hot afternoon in Gujarat, Anand, which is the home of Amul, and I saw cows or buffaloes covered with blanket, and I thought it was pretty torturous. You are covering cows and buffaloes with blanket in a summer heat, and they said, no, these are water-soaked blankets that will cool off cows and buffaloes so that their energy goes towards milk production rather than fighting heat. Now, this is very, very simple Jugaad innovation from India. There are so many such things which we have done. Now, while Jugaad is good, we also need to invest in basic building blocks of science, research, and development. I'm sure if our public and private players come together, they will be able to achieve this. In this budget, government has allowed defense research organizations to work with private sector. My feeling is that this is something which can make a material difference to India. We have a long distance to cover on scientific research and development. We are bridging the gap through Jugaad. Now, we must also work together in public and private to ensure that India's overall scientific research and development continues to go ahead. Now, coming to IT sector companies, clearly we are producing more engineers than most other countries in the world. These engineers are, recruited and trained by private sector companies, and these private sector companies have become multi-billion-dollar enterprises. Fortunately, all these companies have done a great job in managing applications, in supporting infrastructure, in writing programs. And now we are jumping up to the next level where machine learning, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, risk management, digital ecosystem are also coming into play. There's no other country in the world where COVID kind of application is there, but we could roll it out in record time. So there is a journey happening where our IT companies are moving from low-end work to high-end work. It's a journey. There's no destination there. You'll have to keep on improving day after day. But certainly, generic pharma companies and IT companies are showing the way for Indian research and development to move ahead. As I mentioned repeatedly, we have a long distance to cover, but at least we are now moving in right direction.
Thank you so much, sir, and thanks a lot to come to Fundvaliz Nivesh Simplified and give us a direction by doing a Bharati Khoj in a right way and touching upon the different parameters of the Indian economy, right from the infrastructure you talked about, technology, and all these things, and then lastly you have given a right message to the investor. Don't be greedy, don't be fearful, be a long-term investor, be a systematic investor. Thank you so much. This was Mr. Nilesh Shah, Managing Director of Kotak Mutual Fund. We thank you to you for coming to our platform. So thank you very much.
Thank you.